Ooh, lots of people are joining. We're just giving it a few minutes, guys, for everybody to jump on the call. We've got a lot of people joining. Sometimes it takes a minute for them all to come on. So just going to give it a few more seconds. All right, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Advertising Review Lunch and Learn. I'm so happy that you're all here. My name is Alice Tribue. I am the Director of Advertising Compliance here at Currin Compliance Services, and I am so happy that you're here. When we put together the idea for these Lunch and Learns, we never anticipated this response. We are so excited and blown away by the amount of people that have shown interest. So thank you so much again for joining, and we hope that you find this information beneficial. I'm going to jump off camera so that I can just share my screen, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so today we're going to be doing a quick overview of advertising, what it is, what constitutes an advertisement, some review requirements, some best practices that we always like to share with our clients. And this information is always good to keep in mind whenever you're creating or reviewing an advertising piece. An important part of any insurer's attempt to be compliant is the review of any and all advertising materials that they produce or that mention them by name. So why is this so important? We always want to be within the NAIC model regulations. We want to prevent future or potential consumers being given misinformation that can lead to both dissatisfaction and consumer complaints. And we want to avoid regulatory scrutiny and worst of all, fines, because nobody wants to pay those, right? With that, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom window, and we'll address questions as time permits at the end. And if I don't get to you, I encourage and welcome questions sent via email directly to me at atribue@currincompliance.com. And that's also on the meeting invite that went out. So with that, what is advertising or an advertisement? An advertisement means material designed to create public interest in life insurance or annuities or in an insurer or in an insurance producer, or to induce the public to purchase, increase, modify, reinstate, borrow on, surrender, replace, or retain a policy. It's materials used for the recruitment, training, and education of insurers producers that is designed to induce the public to purchase, increase, modify, borrow on, surrender, replace, or retain a policy. So let's talk about what constitutes an advertisement. What is it, right? First, we've all seen these flyers and brochures. These are very common and popular in the insurance industry, right? Emails and email taglines. Email taglines meet the definition of advertising and have to comply with regulations as such. They must be fair and balanced with a complete discussion of any products or services that are mentioned. Blog posts. Now, these are becoming more and more common. A lot more carriers are creating them to highlight their products. So then they go up on a website and they can live there forever. So it's always a really good idea to review these every few years to make sure that the information and sources are still relevant and recent. We also have presentations and training materials, radio spots, television commercials, and podcasts. These are also really gaining popularity. And it's important not only to review or have the initial script reviewed, but also the final product. I can't stress this enough, especially when you're conducting an interview, right? Because while you can script and rehearse your part of the conversation, you can't control what the individual on the other end who's being interviewed will say. So it's always a best practice to have that final podcast reviewed. Billboards and websites and social media posts. And this is not a full list by any means, but it gives you a taste. So I hear this question all the time. Does my material require review? According to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, the simple answer is this. If the material in question is designed to create public interest in life insurance or annuities or an insurer, then it's likely considered to be an advertisement. Anything that is printed or published or distributed to the public that encourages them to purchase a policy is subject to the rules of advertising. Remember, guys, that the content dictates the review. So, training for employees and agents may be subject to review if the materials discuss products and/or services. Always keep in mind that how employees and agents are trained on products is likely how they're going to be presented to consumers. All advertisements, regardless of who has created them, are the responsibility of the insurer whose policies are being mentioned. This is also true even if you aren't aware of them. It's always a really good idea for an insurer to try and have some sort of control over content that is being produced and distributed and the method of distribution. This process should outline what materials need to go to the insurer and which do not. It should explain how to submit items for review. Having a key point of contact can help the overall process flow so much more smoothly and avoid concerns such as unapproved advertising being distributed or modifications to previously approved ads being made without carrier approval. And on the life and annuity side, it's required for the insurers to notify producers annually of the company's requirements that any producer generated advertisement be submitted for review and approval. So now let's get into advertising best practices. As I mentioned before, these are just some of the things that we always like to tell our clients to be mindful of whenever reviewing or creating advertising materials. It's not a complete list, but they're definitely important best practices. First thing is it's important to be truthful and not misleading. NAIC model law states that all advertisements should be truthful and not misleading in fact or by implication. The goal should always be to explain your content in a way that is clear, concise, complete, and not in any way misleading. Materials should always be fair and balanced. So let's say you have a brochure that sings the praises of a particular product, and you're hitting all of the important points that make it wonderful, but then you leave out some of the not so bright facts like penalties, restrictions, and any additional fees. For example, if you're talking about a rider that's an add-on to a policy, well, there's an additional fee there. And if you haven't mentioned that, then your piece might be deemed misleading and not fair and balanced. We want to identify the insurer and product always, always. It's required of any insurer that they disclose their name on any and all advertising material where their products and policies are referenced. For most products, if a specified product is being advertised, the insurer must disclose the policy number. Any producer-generated advertisement must be submitted to the insurer for prior approval. As we mentioned earlier, any producer or third party which mentions an insurance or its products by name must be submitted for approval. An advertisement must disclose the type of insurance that is being discussed. This is actually something that I see quite a bit of. So clients often submit email blasts or series to me for review that give just enough information to hook the intended audience, but never actually discloses the product being offered. So for example, they might say something like, if you want to live the retirement of your dreams and never run out of money, then this just might be for you. Click the link below to schedule a quick 15-minute call with me so that I can tell you all about it. Well, this might seem like a good way to engage your audience. It really isn't compliant and can leave you open for scrutiny. Avoid scare tactics and appealing to the audience's emotions. Fear can be a really powerful tool to get your audience to take notice, right? It may seem like highlighting someone's fears or creating urgency can be advantageous when trying to get them to act. But in regards to insurance, you might be tempted to mention what a potential client may stand to lose by not obtaining the proper coverage. However, when it comes to advertising insurance products, whether it's an advertising piece, a blog post, a presentation, anything really, creating a false sense of urgency and appealing to emotions and using scare tactics of any kind are not permitted. Instead, your focus should really be on how you can help them find the best coverage for their specific needs. So instead of saying, if you haven't purchased this product by now, you'd be lucky to be approved or get it without paying a small fortune. What you can say is, we understand that our clients are in various stages of life, and it's our goal to help you find the product that best fits your needs. So, statements about an insurer. An insurer may not make any disparaging statements about another insurer or their products. It's not permitted to create, publish, or make statements that contain false or derogatory information about an insurance company, its products or services. And this applies to producers and marketing organizations as well. This also applies to making comparisons to other carriers. Disclosure requirements. I know this is everyone's favorite topic, right? Insurers must give equal prominence to exclusions and limitations. Disclosures cannot be minimized, obscured, or ambiguous. They cannot be confusing and they cannot be misleading. So the disclosure must be appropriate to the material. And that doesn't mean an endnote or a footnote. It must be meaningful, it must be readable and prominent to be considered an effective disclosure. It should be understandable and reasonably proximate to the reference it explains. So, for example, let's say you are using cash value in your whole life policy, and you're talking about that on page 1 of your brochure. You know, you can access your cash value for A, B, and C. But the disclosure about cash value is on page 5. This wouldn't be considered reasonably proximate, right? And disclosures can be really tricky, especially when dealing with social media posts, because there's oftentimes a limit on the amount of characters used. Anybody who's used Twitter knows this, right? While many people like to adopt the one click away method, meaning you can click on the link that will then take you to a disclosure page. Well, more and more regulators are stating that they want to see the disclosure right on the social media post. So I always tell my clients to be mindful of this whenever possible. Let's get into the use of statistics. If a statistic is used in an advertisement, they must be relevant and recent. All sources must be cited. If a link to a source is used, we recommend routinely checking them to make sure that they still work. We recommend keeping a physical copy of any and all sources used for record retention purposes. As a best practice, it's suggested that you retain records for a minimum of 5 years. Sources can be a really great tool to use to get your point across or to substantiate any claims that you make. Any sources used should always be checked for their validity before using them. And if your source comes from a website, we always recommend creating a PDF of the page so that you'll have a physical copy. This way, if the website changes, if information on the page changes, you have that physical copy of your source. In addition, the general rule is that your sources should be no more than 2 to 3 years old. I always tell my clients 2 years because I like to err on the side of caution, but 3 years is okay. And with that, that's it, guys. That wraps up our presentation. Let me come back on. Hello. Um, Although our time was limited, we hope that you got a lot out of this, either new information or at the very least, a refresher of information that you already know and should always keep in mind. We didn't want to give you too much information and take you away from your lunch hours for too long. But with that, we want to open it up to questions and answers. If you haven't already done so, you can feel free to type in any questions that you have about basic advertising review. And I'll answer as many questions as I can here live. And if I don't get to your question, or if you think of something later that maybe you didn't want to ask today or have time to, you can please feel free to email me at atribute@currincompliance.com with any questions. So with that, let's see. So how many states require advertising pieces to be filed and approved before the advertising can be reviewed? I don't have that answer off the top of my head. Some pieces definitely have to be filed and approved. Um, and we can kind of take that on a state by state basis. A lot of the times when I'm reviewing a piece, I just do a general review, right? Meaning I look at the NAIC model laws and I go by that. Now, if a client comes in and tells me, okay, well, we're going to file this in states A, B, C, then I'll look at those states individually and I'll see if it needs to be filed or anything like that. How are advertising non-compliances most found? A lot of the times it's other carriers will, if they see an advertisement that they don't feel is compliant, or they will, they'll tell a regulator. Consumer complaints, which is why I always say be fair and balanced, always give the right disclosures on your advertisements, because consumer complaints will get to your regulators and they'll tell on you and then they'll come finding you. So with the limited characters on social media, where/how to suggest disclosing? That's a good question. Um, if you can put it on the picture, if there's a photo, if you can put it on that, that may work. I hope that helped. I know it's hard, especially with the limited characters. I know it's hard, but I did attend a session with some regulators who specifically stated, we want to see your disclosure right in that social media post. I've been learning about certain words to stay away from. Do you have some other keywords to stay away from? For example, always, all, ever. So I'm so glad you asked this, because our next Lunch and Learn next month is about problematic terms and phrases. But the best, the top, like we're the top choice, we're the best of this. You got to stay away from those, because those are absolute and they're very hard to substantiate. If even one person can prove that you're not the best, then you're in trouble, right? On. That one's done. Have there been any specific states that have focused on social media posts? Like I said, I did attend a seminar with regulators who did specifically state, I can't remember the states off the top of my head. I can definitely look that up for you. We'd have to look at some market conducts. If you want to email me, atribute@currincompliance.com, I can look that up and see if I can find you any information. But that's what we've been told by regulators. So just be mindful of that. What are some guidelines around using client endorsements on ads? So such as like testimonials. I think that's what you're talking about. Testimonials can only be for insurance products, no securities products. They have to be, some states don't allow testimonials at all. So you have to do your research on that. And they have to be truthful. They have to be recent, usually within 1 year, no more than that. And they have to represent the author's current opinion. And you have to give the authors, at the very least, first name, first letter of last name in your testimonial. Can advertising reference competitors' products? We try to stay away from that. Don't do it. Try to shy away from talking about your competitors at all, is what I always say, because you don't want to get into an issue where, somebody feels that you're disparaging anybody. That's that one. Distribution requirements for informing agents annually that all advertising must be submitted for pre-approval. Like I said, it is required that they be notified. I think the distribution method is up to you. That's why I stress really just having some form of policy in place on how you go about that. Sorry, let me go back here. If you want to email me, we do have some best practices for that. If you want to email me offline, I can definitely help you out with some of that. Let's see. In reviewing materials such as PowerPoint presentations or web posts, targeting producers/brokers to get them to sell a particular product, how closely should these follow rules about disclosures? Yes, your material should, if it's like, it should always say for producer use only, not for consumers. However, it should have equal prominence, because a lot of the times it'll say for producer use only, but they'll show this to their clients. Like, they'll show these materials. So you always want to be careful with that. I hope that answered your question, Ruth. If not, please feel free to email me. Okay, good. Can you... Is that all we have? I think I've answered everyone. Okay. I think I answered everyone's questions. So that's it for us. Again, if you think of anything, please feel free to email me. Again, my email is atribue@currincompliance.com, and it's also on the Zoom invite. And with that, we would like to thank you for joining us. That's all the time we had for today. Again, I want to thank you so much for attending this session. I hope it was informative, and I'm hoping that you guys will join us next month for problematic terms and phrases. That's going to be a fun one, because we all love to discuss that. And with that, thank you guys. Take care. Have a good one.